everyone. Welcome back if you're returning viewer, and if you're new here, welcome. I'm Leanne. This is Andersen Acres, and we are in the kitchen today. So what are we doing today? Well, today we are going to be baking, and we're going to bake chocolate chip cookies. I love chocolate chip cookies. It's my absolute favorite cookie because they're easy to make, quite delicious, and really, you probably have the ingredients in your cupboard. So take a look in your cupboard, see if you've got what you need. You probably do. The exception might be maybe you don't have chocolate chips, but you can even make them without chocolate chips. It's a very basic cookie recipe. You could switch it up for raisins. You could do a lot of different things. So we are going to get started. We are going to bake these cookies. I am going to take some questions. I have a bunch of questions that I sideloaded on my e-reader that people asked in advance. But if you are in the chat and you want to ask a question about baking or a hobby farm question in general, I will hopefully see the questions in the chat. Sorry about last time. I didn't see them all. Some of those questions are going to be answered today. So if I start talking about bread, it's because I didn't see the questions last time. I think I have got that worked out. So let's get started. So if there is one cookie in all the land that stands out as the cookie of all cookies, it is definitely chocolate chip. Okay. These ones are going to be a chewy version. These are chewy, moist, soft, and incredibly, incredibly delicious. This is my favorite recipe. It's a wonderful cookie that should really be a staple of everyone. Now, some people like chocolate chip cookie. Some people like a cookie that is a little bit more chewy. I like a chewy version. I'm not a fan of the crisp cookies. A lot of the cookies that I bake, like if I bake a ginger snap, I bake them for less time so they don't snap because I like a softer cookie. But a lot of cookies, if you want to, you can simply bake them a little longer and they turn into a snap. I prefer a soft, chewy cookie. So this recipe is easy and simple. Okay, it is uncomplicated. Most of the ingredients are found in your pantry. So this is an easy place to start if you're not really used to baking, if you haven't really done it much. This is an easy place to start. There are a lot of different chocolate chip cookie recipes. You can go on Google and you will find variations on a theme. This one is really easy to adapt. So if you don't want to add chocolate chips, you can sub out for raisins, you can sub out for nuts, you can sub out for dried cranberries. There's a lot of choices here. So that's one of the reasons I like this one. It's very basic and simple and easy to adapt. So let's actually get started. The first thing we're going to have to do, okay, the first thing we have to do is preheat our oven, which I didn't do, which I should have done. So I'm going to do it now. So we're going to preheat our oven. I am going to bake them at 375 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's going to take a few minutes to preheat, but we're mixing cookie dough anyway, so it's fine. So what I'm going to do is I have some butter in my bowl. I'm using butter. Can you use like a plant butter or a margarine? Yeah, sure, it's fine. I'm not. I am specifically using butter, so use butter. But you can use margarine or whatever. It's fine. So I also need to add some sugar. So I didn't pre-measure anything. I'm not even really measuring. I'm just, the scoop I got. I'm not really measuring. Should you measure? Yes, I actually have this recipe on my blog. I'm just going to do one scoop. I just dropped a whole bunch of sugar. Yay. I'm doing white sugar and brown sugar. Can you do just white sugar or just brown sugar? Yes. But I am doing a combination of both. So I like brown sugar, but not enough to do it completely brown sugar. So I like doing a little bit of each. So I'm just going to turn my mixer on and just kind of whir the butter and the sugars together. This mixer's a little bit loud. I apologize for that. It'll only be for a second. There we go. Missing the butter. There we go. There we go. So it doesn't have to be perfectly creamy. I know some recipes are like, well, you must cream it together. Also, a little bit of butter escaped. You don't have to worry about it too much. But Some people are like, it has to be super creamy. Not really until you add the egg. So I'm adding an egg. That's from our chickens. Yes, our chickens are laying really well. I have too many eggs. I need to start doing egg stuff, but I'm not doing egg stuff. I'm making cookies. If I was smart, we would be making a quiche today. And I'm doing a splash of vanilla. How much? It's probably about a teaspoon. Maybe about a teaspoon. Whatever, it doesn't matter. How much vanilla you want. You can also change your extract to a mint extract, and then you have a lot of fun with a mint chocolate chip cookie. You can do that, but I'm using vanilla extract. Change it up to mint if you want mint chocolate chip. Okay, let us whir this together. Again, a little bit loud. Sorry. Okay, I'm literally going to just chuck the most of the rest of my ingredients in. Okay, so I am going to add my flour. I'm going to add my flour. I am going to add my salt. It's just a pinch of salt. And I forgot my baking soda. That's okay. Baking soda's in the cupboard. And it is baking soda for this recipe instead of baking powder. I use baking soda. You can get baking powder versions as well. Does it matter which version you use? No, but if you are using a baking soda recipe, you should use that recipe because a baking powder version bakes a little differently, so you need like a slightly different recipe. There we go. So I'm going to whir this together, but only for a minute because then I'm going to switch. I'm going to keep hitting the mic, but then I'm going to switch over to my hands. Okay, literally, I do not like using the mixer for this part because I find it overmixes the dough. So I just wanted to get some of that worked in there. And then I just switched to my hands. And literally, you just turn your bowl and you're just grabbing and squishing. It's literally that easy. You just grab and squish. It's really, you're just squish, turn. That's how I do it. You just grab and squish. So you don't need to knead this. This isn't a bread dough. You don't need any kneading. You just need to mix the dough. And I don't want to overmix. If you overmix your dough, you end up with a dough that it just doesn't work. You could use a wooden spoon here, but I ultimately always use my hands. Like, even if I start out going, okay, well, I'm only going to use a wooden spoon. I'm not going to use my hands this time. I always end up using my hands. So if I'm going to use my hands anyway, I might as well start out that way. And then, so I'm starting to have a nice lump of dough. What do you want to do is start grabbing the little bits at the bottom because you're going to have little dry bits. And you want to get those worked into your dough as well. And then take your dough up the sides of the bowl and get the flour, right? Get the flour, turn the dough over, squish, find the wet spots. That's what you want to use to mop the flour, is kind of the spots of the dough that are a little bit wet still, a little bit buttery. That's what you want to be doing. The inside of your bowl should end up really clean, okay? And this dough is not really sticky. Like, it's not an overly sticky dough, so it shouldn't, like, stick to your hands. Yeah, you'll have some dough on your hands if you're using your hand to mix it. That's the oven. I've ready and preheated. See, it didn't really matter that I didn't preheat it before. I should have preheated it before we started, but I didn't. But yeah, so this dough is a fairly clean, fairly easy dough. So at this point, I have a little bit of dough on my hands, right? But the bowl is practically clean. So that's what you want. Your dough should completely pull away from the edges of the bowl. It should not be overly sticky. Okay, I'm just going to take the remnants and then I'm going to wash my hands real quick. That's why we're close to the sink. That's why there's lots of dishes in the sink right now. There's dishes everywhere, but that's because we're a cooking and baking family. So if you notice, we always have dishes everywhere. It's not because we don't do the dishes. It's because we literally are a family that cooks and bakes from scratch all the time. There's always somebody cooking and baking from scratch. So just getting any remnants of dough off my hands, because we have one more ingredient that I like to work in with clean hands, and that is the chocolate chips. How much chocolate chips? How much do you want? How much do you like? You could do a little. You could do a medium amount. You could do a lot. So we'll see if we like how many chocolate chips are in here after we mix it. You kind of mix your chocolate chips in, and you look at your dough and you go, is that too many? If it's too many, it's too late. They're already in the dough. But if you think you need a few more, you use a few more. So what specific chocolate chips am I using? Well, I'm using milk chocolate chips. You don't have to use milk. You can use semi-sweet. That's a good amount of chocolate chips. But you can use semi-sweet. You can use dark chocolate. You can use white chocolate. You could turn this into a white chocolate macadamia by using this very basic recipe and using white chocolate chips and macadamia nuts. You can do all kinds of things. So you can be very creative. Washing the hands again, because I can. Because I can, and I want to clean them off. But there's a ton of different options. Okay, you can have dozens of different things. So what do you want to do? What kind of chocolate chip do you like? You could do a mint chocolate chip. That's up to you. You could do a butterscotch. That's okay too. So what's next? Next is this delightful cookie scoop. Okay, this delightful cookie scoop. I'm using, this has a teaspoon side and a tablespoon side, and it's actually silicone, so it's really handy. And I'm using the tablespoon side. I'm filling up that tablespoon side. And if you're wondering what this bowl is, a little bit of sugar. I am popping out a tablespoon worth of dough, rolling it in my palms till it's a ball, rolling said ball in sugar. You don't have to roll it in sugar. I just want to. And then placing that ball untouched on the cookie sheet. I'm not squishing it, okay? We're not going to squish it. We're just going to leave it, because they do spread a little bit. Now, for cookie sheets, you want something non-stick. So I'm using a silicone liner. I like silicone liners because I can reuse them pretty endlessly, right? So I like silicone liners for that. So use a silicone liner if you have. You could also use parchment paper. Don't use wax paper. Why do I say don't use wax paper? It smokes like heck. If you've ever accidentally put wax paper in your oven, you will know that it smokes like crazy. You don't want that. So don't use wax paper. Use parchment paper, and don't use tin foil. Tin foil sticks to the cookies. Okay, don't use tin foil. A silicone liner works really well. You can use a non-stick cookie sheet, which this one was originally, but it's old now. So it's not really non-stick anymore. It's just old. So it's an old cookie sheet. I've had it a very long time. So then you want to pick your liner that fits your cookie sheet. And in my case, I bought silicone liners that exactly fit my cookie sheet. But obviously, if you're cutting parchment paper, you just cut the parchment paper to size. But I like using the liners. I recommend the liners because they're reusable quite endlessly, to be honest. So we're just going to keep doing this. Okay. You want to keep a couple of inches between your cookies. So I'm making fairly large cookies. You could use a teaspoon of dough instead of a tablespoon, and you could make larger, smaller cookies, but you'll still want a couple of inches between them. For that reason, I'm only putting about a dozen cookies on here. We'll finish the rest later. Okay, so you want to make sure that they have some room to spread, because they will spread a little bit. They're not going to stay balls. They're going to spread and basically press themselves. Like you don't have to give your cookies a press. You don't have to do that with this recipe. Okay? You can just leave them. You just leave them alone. It's fine. Don't worry about it. So that's what I'm doing. You can just leave them. And you don't have to roll them in sugar. Okay? We are going to put them in sugar today because I feel like it. You don't have to. Okay? I want them that way. It's not a requirement. Most of the time when you see roll-in sugar, it's a suggestion. You don't have to do that. Okay? So you can. I like doing that, but you don't have to do that. Okay. We only have 3 more to do after this, so it's all fun and games. But this is a lovely recipe. How long are we going to bake? Well, these ones, I like to bake them for 9 minutes, only because I am 9 to 11, because I'm making the larger cookie. Now, if I was making a teaspoon size cookie, so instead of a tablespoon of dough, I would actually do 7 to 9 minutes, depending on your oven and how cooked you want them. So I'm going to set my timer for 9 and then check, because maybe they need a couple extra minutes, but because I don't want the bottoms crispy, okay? I don't want the bottoms crisp. I want the bottoms soft, because I like a soft cookie. I know a lot of people like them crispy. I don't. I don't like my cookies to snap. I like my cookies soft and chewy, but that's a personal preference. It doesn't matter that much. You can make your cookies thinner and bake them a little longer and have a chocolate chip cookie that is crisp, which is my dad's choice, but I want to eat these. So since I want to eat them, I'm making them the way I like them. And that's a little too much dough. And then we will have a handful of dough left over for the next batch. There we go. We'll probably get 6 more cookies out of the dough that's left over. So we're going to set that dough aside. It doesn't need to go in the fridge. This is not a dough that requires refrigeration. And we are going to pop those in the oven, again, without flattening, right? We're not flattening them. And I'm going to set my timer for 9 minutes. There we go. Now we're going to, and what do we need for that? We need a cookie tray, a cookie, and the way we separate this is we just push that down, bring these guys up. This is my triple rack. There we go. There, we caught it. Sometimes when I'm doing it, I don't catch it properly. So then we need that. What else do I need? I need to move the sugar out of my way because I need my gloves. And I'm going to need, I'm just blowing the sugar out of here. Should I just blow the sugar out? No. Did I? Yes. There we go. All right, that's where I'm going to put the pan. Here's my other thing. Here's my list of questions. So if you have a question, it's a good time to drop it in the chat. But, okay. One of the questions I had was, what makes cookies chewy instead of crispy? Well, one of the things is baking them a little bit longer, but also that can burn them. If you're setting out at the beginning and you want to make a cookie crispy or chewy, your recipe is usually a little bit different. Chewy cookies usually have a little bit more brown sugar and moisture, like using melted butter or adding an extra egg yolk or something like that. You might use a little extra butter. Like this had a little bit more butter than I would use if I was going to make them a thin and crispy cookie. So it depends what you're doing. Why did my cookie spread so much? Okay, that's happened to all of us. That's happened to all of us. All of us have had a cookie recipe and we've made it, and all of a sudden the cookie's like blog all over. I had that happen in a video, and I just left it in because you know what happens. So usually what happened was usually warm. We hit the mic again, but your butter might have been too warm. The other possibility is that you used a little bit too much butter. One of the things that can help with that is chilling the dough beforehand. If you did use a little too much butter, that'll help firm up that dough. and letting your pan cool between batches. So when your pan comes out and you take it cool, I need a spatula. That reminds me. But when you're doing that, you don't want to use the hot cookie sheet. So let the cookie sheet cool down to room temperature before you put new cookies on it, because that can also contribute to cookies that spread too much. What's the best flour for cookies? All-purpose flour is just fine, okay? You can just use regular flour. Bread flour will make a chewier cookie, but it literally makes little to no difference. You could just use a regular all-purpose flour. You don't have to get fancy when it comes to making cookies. Cookies are fairly simple. How do I make thick bakery-style cookies? Kind of like we just did here. So these ones are going to be pretty thick, and if I had made them even a little bit bigger, you would definitely see these kind of cookies in a bakery. You bake at a slightly higher temperature, so I'm baking at 375. So a lot of cookies are baked at around 350. And what you want to do is bake them at around 375, because that'll help give you that bakery style. Also, don't flatten them. Okay, I know we are all taught from kidhood, from childhood, you make your cookies and you flatten them a little bit. You flatten them a little bit. You flatten them a little bit. If you want those nice, big, thick, chewy bakery-style cookies, don't do that. Let them naturally spread on their own. Okay, that will make all the difference. Can I freeze cookie dough? Yep. Yep, 100%. So if I were going to freeze this cookie dough, I would take my dough. Okay. In fact, I might as well do some of these. I would take my dough like so, roll it, and I would freeze it exactly like that. Alternatively, roll it in your sugar. Okay, roll that in your sugar. And I would literally freeze it with the sugar on. I would literally just freeze this ball of dough. Just freeze it just like that. Just put them on a cookie tray and freeze them. And what you'll do with them then is you can put them in a bag. So you can actually stick them in a bag and take them out one by one. And you can bake them from frozen. Give them a few extra minutes in the oven. Okay, so you can. Just bake them till they're done. So if your cookies would normally bake for 9 to 11 minutes, if they're frozen, you're probably looking at 12 to 15. But you can absolutely freeze them. They'll stay frozen in your deep freezer for about 6 months. So if you want to batch bake your cookies and then only take out a handful of them when you are actually going to be baking your cookies, that's fine too. You can do these in a large batch. So freezing cookie dough works wonders. Okay, 100% you can freeze your cookie dough. And I would freeze them individually. So shape them into your balls, put them on a tray, freeze them till they're solid, and then just put them in a freezer bag. Okay, and then you'll have cookies whenever you want to have cookies. It'll literally be the easiest thing ever. Why do recipes call for unsalted butter? That's so you can control the salt content. You can use salted butter just fine. It generally doesn't make a difference. The only time I find it really makes a difference if you look at a recipe and it calls for unsalted butter and there's no salt in the recipe itself, then you might want to use unsalted butter, but you can use salted just fine. It's not really a big deal. You do need a little salt in most cookies. So if you use a salted butter, you might want to just skip that pinch of salt. You know how I did a pinch of salt? You might just want to skip that. What kind of chocolate is best for cookies? That entirely depends on you. I used milk chocolate today. I happen to love milk chocolate chips. Okay, I love them. I am not the biggest fan of, oops, that was loud. But I am not the biggest fan of dark chocolate or even semi-sweet. The way I see it is if I'm going to the trouble to have chocolate, then I am going to have the chocolate I like best. But you can literally use whatever kind you want. I'm just using milk chocolate chips. I'm going to snack on some. So you can use anything you like. Semi-sweet is the most common and called for in most recipes. But dark chocolate chunks give you a really rich cookie. Butterscotch chips change the flavor. They're not really chocolate, though. You can take one of those bars of chocolate, chop them up, Put them in your cookies. It's really good. So it really is up to you. You can switch to a milk chocolate like I did. It doesn't matter. What do you want? All of the chocolate chips are designed to be baked. So it doesn't matter. It literally, it doesn't matter. Whatever one you want. What happens if I overmix my cookie dough? Now, overmixing is the reason why I mix this by hand. And what happens if you overmix your cookie dough is the thing that happens when you're kneading your bread dough. So when you knead your bread dough, you're kneading it to develop the gluten, that sticky stretchiness of the dough, right? The thing that allows the dough to rise and to be fluffy. It develops the gluten. If you overwork your cookie dough, you're starting to develop the gluten. You don't want to develop the gluten in a cookie. So what happens is they'll end up really like tough or even like cakey instead of being cookie-like. So don't overmix your cookie dough. That's one of the reasons why after I have the initial butter creamed with the sugar, I switch to mixing by hand. I give it a quick whir with the dry ingredients, and then I switch to my hands because I don't want to overmix it. You mix it till it's perfect, and you call it a day. You don't overmix because it ends up destroying the texture of your cookie. They don't feel like cookies in your mouth, and that's not fun. How do I know when my cookies are done? Edges should be golden brown. Let's see if these are done. I'm calling that done. So edges should be golden brown, like these ones are. And you're going to notice mine are kind of domed, which is what I want. Okay, mine are kind of domed. The edges are just starting to turn golden brown. Okay, I'm also, by the way, setting a 2-minute timer so I don't take those off too soon. I have a tendency to take my cookies off the tray a little bit too soon. And you're supposed to let this recipe should sit on the cookie sheet for 2 minutes. So I set a time. So when they're golden brown around the edges, not all the way across the top, that's overbaked. But when the edges and the bottom are starting to turn golden brown, but it still looks like a soft cookie. Like these will start sinking down in a minute because they're now out of the heat. So they'll start collapsing a little bit, which is what you want. Think about the cookies you buy at the bakery. They are big and fat, but they're not domed. So these tops will start sinking in a minute. But they should look firm, right? But still soft and pillowy. But they shouldn't be doughy. So if I touch them, they shouldn't immediately be like, ew, that's raw dough. And they should have spread. You notice these guys did. Do I need to chill the cookie dough? Depends on the dough. Okay? It entirely depends on the dough. So this recipe does not require chilling. Okay? It has the perfect ratio of your flour to your butter to your sugar. So it does not require chilling to turn out beautifully. Some of them do. Chilling can improve the texture and prevent excess spread. So generally, if a recipe tells you to chill the cookies, the cookie dough, it means it. Okay? Generally, it's not a suggestion. Most of the time, if a recipe says chill that cookie dough, it's because if you don't chill that cookie dough, you're going to end up with cookies that spread all over your pan instead of sort of hold their shape. So just follow the recipe you've got. And when in doubt, chill the cookie dough anyway. It's never going to hurt anything. So if you're not sure, put it in the fridge for an hour. Oh, some personal questions. What's my favorite cookie recipe on the farm? This one. I love the chocolate chip cookies. Okay, we are now going to take these off. Flat, thin spatula. This is a spatula that I stole from my mom. My mom got this when she got married to my dad. Okay? Way back when they first got married, this spatula was, I think it was a bridal shower present to my mom. Yes, they used to give each other spatulas. That used to be an excellent shower gift. So this is really, really thin. Okay? It is paper thin. And that's what you want. So if your mom or your grandma has a spatula like this, steal it. Just go in there and take it. Just go take your mom or your grandma's spatula. Whoa, that wasn't good. Depending on how old you are, it'll either be your mom or your grandma who has one like that. You want it, okay? You want it. It gets under cookies really, really well. And when you are getting these cookies off, you want to kind of spread them out on your cooling pan. You don't want them touching. You want the air to be able to circulate around them. Okay, so steal a spatula, get yourself a 3-tiered rack or 2-tiered rack, depending on how much you bake, and spread your cookies out after you take them off there. Okay, do your animals ever try to get your baking? Yes. Yes. Have you met Tequila? As soon as she wakes up, she's pregnant right now, so she's sleeping. But as soon as she wakes up, she's going to realize I've made cookies. And she's going to eat those cookies. So do they ever try to get the baking? Yeah, Tequila. Tequila does it. Tequila takes all the cookies. How do you manage baking with farm chores? Anytime there is a lull in the stuff I'm doing on the farm, I do some baking. Because somebody always needs something. Somebody always needs sandwiches, or somebody always is going to need some cookies for their lunch boxes or things like that. So whenever I have a moment, and you have to know how long things take. So bread dough, let's say you use a bread maker to mix the dough, but you're still going to shape and bake it. Well, then you'll need about 10 minutes to get the ingredients into the bread maker, and then you're going to need about 20 to 30 minutes to shape it, and then you're going to ignore it while it rises again, and then you're going to bake it for like half an hour. So if you're doing bread, you kind of form things around that. Everything else, like cookies, we have finished cookies here, and how long have we been going for? Half an hour. So if you have half an hour free time, you can make these cookies. We're done, except I have to bake these ones, which reminds me. Don't do what I'm doing right now. I'm putting them on a warm cookie sheet, and I said not to do that. But tough cookies for me. I'm doing it anyway. I just want to get these in the oven. I want to get them in the oven. So that's what I'm doing. Too bad for me. Just doing it. And setting the timer for 9 minutes again. Okay, where was I? How do you manage baking with farm chores? By sliding it in whenever you have a moment. Okay, if you have half an hour, you can bake cookies. So you just take the minute, and you're sitting around for 9 minutes waiting for them to come out of the oven anyway. So pick something simple if your schedule's really busy, and perfect it before picking something else is really the trick. So get good at what you're baking, and then it doesn't take as long. What's your favorite thing to bake besides cookies? Bread. Bread is my hands down favorite food in the world. It is so versatile. I can do anything with it. I can make a pizza. I can make sandwiches. Bread is my 100% favorite thing to bake. I also really like the way bread dough feels on the hands. So, bread. Have you ever had a cookie fail? Yeah. I think we all have. Most of my cookie fails involve adding a little too much butter, and then they spread all over the pan and get really, really gross. And that's fine sometimes, especially if you decide, okay, I'll turn my ginger cookie into a ginger snap. Then you bake it longer. It's not really that big a deal. But sometimes it is a big deal. Like I added too much butter to my sugar cookie recipe, and they were nicely formed candy canes for Christmas, and they bled all over the pan, and they ended up going to the animals because I needed to do it again because I added too much butter. That's my usual problem, because I have this thing where I often don't measure. And when you're often not measuring, what happens is you end up with too much butter, because I happen to love butter. Some questions on substituting. Okay. Substituting things. That's a fairly good question. So we're going to talk first about, what was the first one? Can I substitute oil for butter? Yes, but generally you shouldn't. It's not that you can't. Okay, you can, but the flavor and texture will change. So if instead of with these guys, sorry. But instead of butter, if I had used, let's say, canola oil, their texture would change quite a bit. they would be quite a bit softer and even a little bit greasy. So can you use oil? Yeah, technically you won't like the results. If you can't use butter, and some people can't have butter, that's fine. Try a plant butter or a margarine instead. Oil is not generally the best idea for a cookie. You can do it. It's just going to change the texture a lot. If you want something where the texture is a little more consistent with a cookie, then you're going to want to stick with like a butter, a margarine, or even a plant butter. What's a good egg substitute? There's a few. It depends on what you have. So if you have flax meal, you can add like a tablespoon of ground flax. You can take flax seeds and grind them up. And about a tablespoon of flax and about 3 tablespoons or such of water. That you let it soak, let it kind of develop its consistency, and it'll be roughly 1 egg. You can use applesauce. You can use mashed banana. You can use, if you have chickpeas, if you like chickpeas, I like roasted chickpeas, they're so good. But if you get chickpeas in a can and you drain them, don't waste the water. You can use the water that the chickpeas are in. It makes a pretty good egg substitute. You're looking at about 3 tablespoons, 3 to 4 tablespoons is about equivalent to 1 egg. If it looks egg-sized, it's about an egg. So all of those will work if you can't use eggs or if you're out of eggs. You just come to my house and steal some eggs from me because I have way too many eggs. Can I reduce the sugar in cookie recipes? Technically, yes, but it will affect the texture and the browning. So I would reduce it slowly. Okay, sorry about that. We're having connection issues. So reducing sugar in cookies, can you do it? Technically, yes. Technically, you can reduce the sugar in cookies. Do it slowly and do it carefully because it will affect the texture, the flavor, and the browning. So if you're going to, for example, we used, I guess, about 2/3 of a cup of sugar in this recipe today. I would only take 2 tablespoons out of it at a time, because if you take out too much of the sugar, you're going to notice that they are flat and that the butter doesn't cream properly because there's not enough sugar to it. And so reduce the amount of sugar slowly in each batch till you kind of find that sweet spot where you can't reduce it anymore because it kind of gets out of control and you don't like the texture anymore. Can I use whole wheat flour in cookies? Yes, technically. If you still want them soft and tender, like these are going to be really soft and tender cookies. If you still want your cookies to be soft and tender, I wouldn't do more than half whole wheat. I would leave the other half your regular all-purpose flour. But you can. There's nothing wrong with it. Just know they'll be a little bit denser, and they might, especially if you do all whole wheat, they'll probably have kind of a nutty flavor you might not love. So try it and see if you like it, because you might not. Can I use honey or maple syrup instead of sugar? Yes, you can. Okay, I often use maple syrup or honey in my cookies. Can you do that? Yes. Bear in mind that that is adding liquid to your cookie recipe. So take a look at any other liquids that you have in there and reduce them accordingly, or increase the dry ingredients. Because what is going to end up happening is your cookies will be drier and chewier because you've added a little bit, not drier, sorry. They'll be kind of chewier and might be a little more, not liquidy, but they won't firm up as nicely because they have too much liquid. Because remember, syrups and honeys are liquid. So just account for that in your ratios. Okay, so if you're using a whole bunch of maple syrup, you're going to need to reduce some of the other liquid and butter ingredients just because you're going to have too much moisture in your cookie. What was another question on here? Do I need a stand mixer to bake cookies? No. You don't even, I used a hand mixer in today's video. You do not even need to use a hand mixer. You can use a bowl and a wooden spoon, or you can forego the wooden spoon entirely and just use your hands. you do not need a mixer. Okay, so if you don't have a mixer and all you got is a bowl, you can still make cookies. Okay, I know we all see all these Instagram things of these mixers and slow-mo mixing the cookie dough. You don't need that. You can just make your cookies. What is the best baking sheet for cookies? If you want even browning, you might want to go with a aluminum pan. Darker pans brown your cookies faster because they attract more heat. So it depends on what you're going for. So if you want your cookies to brown faster, then you would use a dark colored pan. Otherwise, use a lighter pan, aluminum, for example, because it will slow down that browning and kind of keep it a little more even. So it depends what you're going for. Do I need to line my baking trays? I always do. I always do. So using something like a parchment paper or a silicone mat does help prevent sticking. And so your cookies will just come off like a dream and you won't have to fight with your cookie sheet. So I do like to line my cookies. And I don't ever use wax paper. Don't use wax paper. If you've ever put wax paper in the oven by accident and then your kitchen has filled with smoke, you will know exactly why you should not put your wax paper in the oven. So do not line your cookie sheets with wax paper. Use a parchment paper or a silicone mat. I am going to set my timer for 2 minutes so that I don't take those off too early. Okay, next question. Why do some recipes use baking soda and others use baking powder? Good question. So they do different things, okay? So for balanced rise and spread, you're going to want soda, okay? It depends on what your recipe is doing. So soda helps you brown, okay? With a baking soda, you get a little bit better browning. The baking powder gives you more lift. So baking soda doesn't have a ton of oomph to it. So you'll notice like my cookies they didn't like rise, right? Cookies don't rise that much, but they didn't rise. They spread a little bit from their original ball of deliciousness, but they didn't rise. Whereas if you're using a baking powder, you will get some rising action. So they do different things, okay? Baking soda helps control the spread of your cookie. Baking powder gives you the oomph. Baking soda browns them a little bit more. Baking powder keeps them from browning a little bit. So they are different products with different purposes. Okay, so they control the rise and the spread and the browning of your cookies. Can I use margarine instead of butter? Yep, you can. The flavor will be a little bit different, okay? So your cookies will also spread a little bit more if you use margarine, but the flavor, obviously, it won't taste like butter. Anyone who's ever taste tested butter and margarine, there's no way you're going to convince anybody the margarine is butter, okay? You put some on your tongue, it doesn't taste the same. It does not taste the same. I don't care what anybody says, okay? It is not the same. Some people are like, well, you can't believe it's not butter. It tastes like butter. No, it doesn't. I promise you it doesn't. I'm not knocking margarine. I'm just saying it is not a butter substitute. It's a different product. But you can use margarine in your cookies. That's not that big a deal. It will change the flavor. It may change the texture. And you have to remember that your cookies using margarine will probably spread a little bit more. So one of the reasons I like to use butter is because butter controls the spread. Okay, they don't go as crazy as when you use margarine. So a butter cookie will be a little bit firmer, a little bit more stay in your zone, and a margarine cookie may spread a little bit. So if you use margarine, you might want to increase the flour content by 1 or 2 tablespoons just to help slow down that spread. Oh, storing cookies. Okay. How do I keep cookies soft after baking? Okay, so first you put them away before they harden. So put them away before they get hard. Okay, but the second thing is if you're having trouble keeping them soft, Put a piece of bread, a piece of sliced bread in with your cookies. You can also get they make these brown sugar bears that I have for my brown sugar containers. You can definitely use those brown sugar bears to keep your cookies moist as well. You soak brown sugar bear in some water, follow the directions on the package. You soak it in some water and put it in the thing, and it helps keep things moist. But if you are having trouble with your cookies drying out, a slice of apple or a slice of bread, the same ways you would keep your brown sugar from going all swirly on you is how you would keep your cookies from going hard. How long does cookie dough last in the fridge? 3 to 5 days. I wouldn't keep it longer than that if it's only in the fridge. The freezer, it lasts quite a bit longer. In just the regular freezer in the fridge, it'll probably keep for 4 to 6 weeks. In the deep freeze, if you have a deep chest freezer, they are a little bit colder than your regular freezer. And in there, you'll probably get 4 to 6 months, to be honest. Can I bake cookies in advance for an event? Yes, you can pre-bake them. So you could take these cookies now, bake them, and you can either store them in an airtight container. If, for example, you are taking them to an event tomorrow, you could do that. Or you can bake them like this, let them cool completely, stick them bottom sides together, wrap them, and freeze them, okay? You wrap them, freeze them the morning of your event, you take them out, lay them on their trays, and they will defrost as you are traveling to your event. So you can absolutely bake your cookies and then freeze them and then take them to an event. It'll be just fine. Cookies freeze really well. I know not everything does. Cookies are fantastic to freeze and then to defrost later. They don't even take long to defrost because cookies tend to be pretty little. So it works fine. Don't worry about it. Do you ever gift cookies from the farm? Yes. Most of the gifts I give for the holidays or for birthdays, stuff like that, are cookies. So if you're getting a Valentine's gift from me, it's probably cookies or other baked goods. So things like that make wonderful gifts, especially if you package them really nicely. So you absolutely can bake a bunch of cookies around the holidays and use those as gifts, or do cookie mixes or brownie mixes. All that kind of stuff is a wonderful gift. I find that these days people really do appreciate the homemade nature of cookies and breads and stuff like that. So yeah, homemade stuff makes a wonderful gift. What's your trick for making cookies look perfect? First of all, nothing's ever perfect, but if you want a cookie that does look pretty perfect, so these guys look really good. Okay, I really like the way that cookie looks. It looks just wonderful. Okay, so if you want something that is pretty good looking, the trick is to, one, scoop uniformly. That's where a scoop like this comes in handy. So this has a teaspoon side and a tablespoon side. It is silicone, so you can just pop, pop, pop. But you definitely want to scoop them uniformly. If you want them to look really stuffed with chocolate chips, the other thing you can do is right before baking, press a few extra chocolate chips into the top and then bake them. And then they'll look like they're stuffed full of chocolate chips, so you can do that. And you want to avoid over baking. So one of the biggest problems with baking cookies is you think they're not done because they're like, well, it just doesn't look done yet. I promise they are done. Okay, so basically what ends up happening is you look at them, you go on 5 more minutes. Well, the 5 more minutes turns them hard as a rock. So if you want really professional looking cookies, take them out when the recipe says to take them out, and then let them cool on the tray for a couple minutes, then transfer them to a wire rack to cool. It will enhance the beauty and integrity of your cookies. Some farm questions I got. Do you bake with farm fresh eggs? Yep. The eggs we used in here today were farm fresh. Unless I don't have any, which sometimes in the depths of winter, we get really cold winters. It's 40 below here in the winter, so sometimes the eggs are cracking before we can get to them, so we don't have eggs. So we use farm fresh eggs in our baking when we can, and that's most of the year. And then sometimes in the depths of winter, usually like January, beginning of February, we might have to buy eggs because it happens. But for the most part, yes, we use farm fresh eggs. How do you store flour on the farm? Okay, so I go through flour fast. Okay, I can go through what amounts to 10 pounds. Oh, it's actually more than 10 pounds. it's a 10-kilo bag, so it's like 22 pounds of flour. I can go through 22 pounds of flour in a week. So I don't have to worry about it too much. I literally have a container on wheels that my flour is stored in down there beside the coffee maker because I use it all the time. I don't have to worry about keeping it longer than that. If you don't use very much flour, okay, especially if you live in an area that gets a lot of bugs and stuff and you're not using your flour very fast, the freezer will keep your flour from becoming infested with bugs. So use your freezers to store your flour if you're not using it up. I don't have to worry about that because I use flour very, very, very fast. Do you grind your own flour or do you buy it? Mostly I buy it. I have ground it myself. I don't like doing that. I don't mind doing it. It's not that big a deal. It's just that get yourself some wheat berries and then you don't even have to have a real flour grinder. Stick them in your blender or your, I don't know, what's that thing called? The magic bullet or whatever you have that grinds things. Grind up some wheat berries. Take a cup of wheat berries and put them in your blender or whatever and grind them up and see how much flour you get. The answer is not very much. And for most of us, we're not going to grind our own flour because the time and effort is not worth the return. Also, our flour is all milled locally. Okay, I live on the Canadian prairies. Okay, wheat farms are everywhere. Wheat processing happens here. So our flour is pretty much all local. So I don't really see the point in doing that. The flour we use does not travel very far because it's literally growing in fields around us. Okay, though I think the guy this year is growing soybeans behind us, but he grew wheat before. But it varies. But we live in a really heavily agriculture area, Canadian prairies, and we don't have to worry about not having local flour. So I don't need to grow my own wheat. I can, and sometimes I do. Sometimes I decide, that'll be fun this year to grow a little bit of wheat. But there's no way I can grow enough to supplement my own needs because I use a lot of flour. Like I said, I can go through more than 20 pounds of flour a week. And that's a lot. But I bake all my own bread and all my own cookies and all my own cakes. And everything you can do with flour, I do it from scratch. So because I do all of the things from scratch, I use a lot of flour. So grinding it myself is a lot of time and effort for very little reward. Every once in a while, I get the bug and I decide I'm going to do it. And I realize I got one sack of flour out of everything I grew. Because I don't grow a lot either. I don't grow a lot of wheat. I grow a lot of other things. Do the kids help with baking? Yes, especially when they were really small. A really good way to get them involved in the kitchen is baking because it tends to be a little bit safer. So when you're cooking, you're at the stove, right? And there's a lot of hot stuff and a lot of things happening that don't touch, hot, 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 hot. So that's a little harder with small kids. When my kids were small, I would put them in charge, as much as you put 6-year-olds in charge of things, of baking, because it's less dangerous and they can participate in almost all of the process. The only thing mom has to do is put the cookies in the oven and take the cookies out of the oven. So mom does the hot stuff. You guys can mix in all the chocolate chips and you can do all that. You can get your hands in the dough and smash, 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 smash. It's fun. It's like Play-Doh. So that's the easiest way to get your kids started in the kitchen. Okay, that's the easy, simple way to get your kids started in the kitchen. What are your favorite herbs or flowers to bake with from the garden? Lavender. I really love lavender cookies. That one's a no-brainer. A little bit of lavender, a little bit of lemon zest, and you have these perfect, delicious cookies. So if there's an herb for baking I can't do without, it's either oregano or lavender. But lavender is absolutely fantastic in cookies. Okay? It's absolutely wonderful, and I really like them. These should be cool enough. So we're going to take a cookie, break it open, and eat it. So these are our cookies. They're mostly cool. I can still feel a little bit of warmth. But then we're just going to gently break it open. And you see the chocolate chips are ooey and gooey the way they're supposed to be. And the insides are still soft and gentle. I'm not going to eat that right now. I like to wait till they're really, really cool. So I'm not going to eat it right this second, but I'm going to eat them later. But they are absolutely perfect. And depending on your oven, you're going to cook your cookies for, depending on the recipe in the oven. Some cookies are done in 7 minutes, some take 15. If your oven is the kind of oven that takes a little bit longer to cook things, you're probably adding 2 to 4 minutes to your timer. But either way, cookies are delicious. We love them. Everyone loves them. And making cookies from scratch is excellent. Anyway, that is literally it for us today. I have so much to do today, but it'll be fun because I have chicks hatching in the other room. I can hear them cheeping. So I have chicks hatching. I have baby bunnies. I have Tequila is pregnant. I've got kittens in the garage. I've got a lot happening. So I got to go. But thanks for joining me here today at Andersen Acres. I hope you had a little bit of fun. I hope you learned something. Join us next week. I think we're doing an animal spotlight, probably on Hull and Lop rabbits, because I have Hull and Lop babies, and that could be a lot of fun. So join us next week at around the same time. I don't know what time zone you're in, but for me, it's 2 p.m. on Fridays, whatever that translates to. I'm Central Time because I'm on the prairies, middle of nowhere, Central Time. So yes, join us next week. We will be outside playing with baby Hull and Lops and talking all about Hull and Lops and raising them and how cute they are, because Hull and Lops are darn cute. But we'll see you tomorrow. Hopefully you will join us next week. And I got to walk all the way over here to turn off the live stream because I forgot my clicker.